Welcome to the Birds and the Bees podcast. This is Braxton Judson.
That's the key. People aren't talking about it.
Everybody needs to know that porn is not a documentary.
It's not like if we don't talk to kids about sex and sexuality, they're not going to hear about it. They're just not going to hear about it from us.
They have tons of questions, they just don't know how to ask them.
All you have to do is be one chapter ahead. You don't have to know everything. Just one chapter ahead of wherever your child is.
What lengths do you go to meet expectations? For most men, sexual performance is one where, no pun intended, men go to great lengths for an extra inch or two. Men also compare themselves with others in regards to sexual stamina, girth, and so on. Some even get alterations that are dangerous and ineffective in the long run. Hey everyone, this is Braxton Judson. Welcome to Birds and Bees podcast. So glad to be with you hive mates once again. If this is your first time, welcome to the show. If you're a longtime listener, thank you for your continued support. We're talking today about premature ejaculation or early ejaculation, penis diseases, delayed ejaculation, the P-shot, and penis elongation. The topics we're talking about today are usually things that people don't typically like to talk about. However, we're addressing them today with a board-certified urologist, Dr. Brandeis, because it really is at the heart of being human, being a man, and a lot of the curiosities that people don't talk about are actually leading men to make decisions uninformed that cause a lot of problems. We're taking these difficult topics head-on because some men take desperate actions to change their sexual experiences, which in long term causes harm. Dr. Brandeis is the Director of Clinical Excellence for GAINSWave. He has served as the Chief of Urology at John Muir Hospital for the past 8 years. As Chief of Urology, he has helped to start the Surgical Robotics Program at the Concord Campus in 2002. He is the lead trainer for male sexual wellness for Revive, and in my experience, an expert in putting research into layman's terms. And you're going to hear that in this episode as well, just as you did in the last episode about erectile dysfunction. If you find this episode supportive, I encourage you to think of someone who could use this episode and share it with them. Now, I'm talking all men specifically, because even if they're not talking to you about penis issues, there is a really good chance this has crossed their mind or they have a lot of curiosities about that. We're all growing together in these discussions. Man, there's just all sorts of puns, aren't there? And you sharing this may be the support that they need to start these important conversations with their partners, with themselves, with their doctor. So I'm really excited that everyone's here listening. I really appreciate you helping get the podcast to where it is today. And there's been a lot of individuals who've been asking for parenting courses that I put out. And I just released 2 e-courses on pornography, parenting, and conversations with your children, as well as one that I've labeled Help. I Caught My Child Looking at Porn. Now what? Go check these courses out on birdsandbeespodcast.com. I have a link on the front page there you can click on, and it takes you right to these courses. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave me a voicemail or text me at 385-449-1818. You can also email me at birdsandbeespodcast@gmail.com. I encourage you to, if you really want to support the show, go check out our new Patreon page. As time goes on, I'll keep adding more things for those that are supportive and become monthly donators. This really helps the podcast to grow, and it is going to help us get to places that I can't do just by myself. I really need your help in this, and I appreciate all of you who have supported me in the past and who are willing to support me in the future in this Birds and Bees podcast endeavor. Thanks again for listening. I appreciate you being a part of the Hive, and here we go with the interview with Dr. Brandeis. Hey everybody, welcome to Birds and Bees podcast. Today I am back with Dr. Judson Brandeis, and we are talking today about premature ejaculation. We're going to get into penis diseases as well as delayed ejaculation and what some men have been attempting to do to elongate their penis. So we have a lot of information to get through today, but I'm so excited to have Dr. Judson, or call you Dr. Judson, I guess. How do people refer to you?
Dr. Brandeis usually.
Dr. Brandeis. So we got Dr. Brandeis here to be able to help us understand what we need to know about these male factor issues. So welcome back to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. You know, these are great topics to bring up either at Christmas parties or corporate cocktail parties.
Cocktail parties, like how you slipped that one. Most definitely. What we're going to be talking about today is actually going to be, as much as we're, joking about it right now, it is so important that we have these conversations, that we're talking about them in such a frank way, because if we are not having these conversations, we're seriously talking about men that have gone through different surgeries to try and achieve something that ultimately has brought on more issues just because we haven't had these hard conversations. And oh my gosh. Yeah, everything is going to also come back into possibly a double entendre or an innuendo. So bear with me as I work through this podcast. So let's start off with let's talk a little bit about premature ejaculation. So what in a past episode we've talked about what premature ejaculation is when it comes to diagnosis, essentially having an orgasm before you wish, but also in roughly under a minute or within a few thrusts. Is that when you're talking to patients about it, is that what you're also referring to?
Sure. So that's a kind of a technical definition. A more practical definition is ejaculating before you want to ejaculate.
Okay.
Ejaculating without control, not being able to exhibit ejaculatory control.
Okay.
And having that affect your quality of life, affect the quality of your sexual life, affect the quality of your partner's sexual experience. And a lot of times that kind of rolls down into the way people feel about themselves, that they're sexually inadequate or they're not able to perform at a level that they think that they should perform. And a lot of people begin to feel like they should measure up to some sort of pornographic movie or pornographic star. I mean, pornography is a huge, huge problem in our society. The access to pornography is just out of control. And so, without the proper sexual education. So that I think the problem is that pornography is the education. So we're like, great, we're supposed to go for anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour without an ejaculation with some pretty heavy sexual experiences. Exactly. And so, most surveys will say that men between the ages of 20 and 50, about a quarter of them don't have the ejaculatory control that they want.
Okay.
And that affects them in all sorts of ways. I even have patients that, are horribly depressed. I mean, we've had stories of men even committing suicide.
Oh.
Because there are men that can't even get their penis out of their pants without ejaculating. Now, that's not sort of the normal experience, but men who don't have ejaculatory control, that's a big issue.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And as we talk about this, it is really important that we recognize when it's important to get information about what to expect when it comes to ejaculation, because if our expectations are in a certain way, that we're thinking we're supposed to last for so long, or that we're supposed to be able to last until our partner orgasms, and that's through, continuous thrusting, and we're like, I can just never get that it's also important that we adjust and recognize what our expectations are and get some education about what is what we can expect. Yeah, what is good.
First of all, most guys don't even know that most women can't have a vaginal orgasm.
Mm-hmm.
Only about a quarter of women can have vaginal orgasms. So, you can thrust all you want, your partner's not going to experience an orgasm.
Yeah.
Most women, the clitoris is the sexual organ that has the most sensitivity. And so you have to be able to stimulate the clitoris in order for a woman to have an orgasm.
Yeah. Yeah. For 3/4 of women.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then for most men, when you look at the normal bell curves, 3 to 10 minutes is pretty typical for how long between penetration and ejaculation.
Yeah. Yep. 3 to 10 minutes.
These ideas that guys go a half an hour, 2 hours, whatever, tend to be more movies than reality.
Yeah. And if you are going to those levels, then what we tend to start seeing is more people being frustrated because you're wanting to have an orgasm. And that's when we start getting into the delayed ejaculation diagnosis or experience.
And, a lot of these issues come from misperceptions in terms of how long it takes for people to ejaculate, or most men who seek penile elongation or augmentation tend to have normal penises.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a choice. There's nothing wrong with trying to make that choice, but to feel like you're inadequate because your penis size is X, Y, or Z, or it takes you 3 or 4 minutes before you can ejaculate. And that's inadequate. That has to be dealt with psychologically before dealt with physiologically.
Yeah. So as you're looking into this, what I'm hearing you say is you're looking into, maybe I want penile elongation, or I'm having a problem with premature ejaculation, that it's appropriate to go see a therapist to go check in with where am I feeling my norm is, especially with a sex therapist or someone that knows these parts and can give you a valid referral to a urologist or someone that it's like, oh no, this is an issue. Let's get you in with something so we can check out the medical side. We can check out your psychological side. And is that what I'm getting from you?
Absolutely. I mean, it's like when I trained at UCLA for urology, and I didn't want to live in Los Angeles, because if you live in a $2 million house in Los Angeles, you're always looking at the $5 million house down the road. Mm-hmm. And if you live in a $5 million house, you're always looking at the $10 million house, up the hill. And so a $2 million house is perfectly fine in Los Angeles. But if you're always judging yourself by what other people are doing or what other people are telling you that they're doing, you're going to get yourself into trouble.
100%, especially when it's all the hearsay of like, we're hearing it through a lens, as if you're watching someone's life through social media. Oh, exactly. Everyone's always happy. Well, no, everyone's not always happy. It's the same with their sex life. People aren't aren't necessarily sharing things that they don't want you to know. And so there is that filter to keep in mind.
Exactly. But in terms of ejaculation, if you are unhappy with how long or how short your period is between penetration and ejaculation, there are things that you can do.
Okay.
So the most popular really are delay creams or delay sprays. Mm-hmm. So there's something called Promescent. Promescent is basically a lidocaine spray.
Yeah. And
the lidocaine spray is, I don't know exactly what they use, but it attaches to the penis and it doesn't transfer.
Yes.
So if you have a numbing cream
mm-hmm.
and it transfers to the partner, then the partner's not going to be all that happy because it's not going to feel like much. Promescent somehow figured out a way to spray on the lidocaine. If you spray on the lidocaine, wait 5 or 10 minutes, you desensitize the frenulum of the penis, which is where most of the nerve endings end up on. So it's the underside of the head of the penis, which is the most sensitive place of the penis, where the highest density of nerves are. And if you desensitize that, then in general, men can go for a longer period of time before they climax.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's one fairly simple thing that you can do.
Mm-hmm. Promescent, I spoke with them at the ASECT conference, so the American Association for Sexual Educators, Counselors, and Therapists, and they gave me some samples and things like that. And for the sake of science, tried it out. And it is seriously, like, it is pretty crazy to see just how much it actually will bring a desensitization into it. And again, if you use it too fast, if you don't, like, it's an interesting sensation, and it is something that, I mean, for the sake of science, like I said, I used it.
Yeah.
To see what that would be like.
In my office, I do everything.
Yeah.
I've done shockwave, I've done P-shots, I've done, PRP, I've done everything that I bring into my office. I try on myself mm-hmm. to know how to explain it to patients, to have that same experience that patients have. Totally.
And I'm not getting any money from Promescent. Are you?
No.
Okay. So yeah, we're not sponsored or anything by Promescent, but that's just one that I guess I can say I've spoken with the people, I've read over and done a little bit of research on them. And so that's something that I recommend that way as well, if you're looking for a spray.
Mm-hmm. Now, 5 or 10 years ago, a lot of people were taking selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors.
Oh, yeah.
And what they found was that it delayed ejaculation. So then there was a lot of research done on serotonin as a neurotransmitter in the brain that affects ejaculation. Mm-hmm. And so ejaculation and orgasm is a difficult thing to study, as you can imagine. So there's not a huge body of literature in terms of looking at the neural pathways behind that. But as best we can tell, the more serotonin you have, the better able you are to control ejaculation.
Totally. And so when you're talking an SSRI, what medications are you talking about? Because that's mostly like Zoloft.
Lexapro, Prozac. Now, there is one SSRI that was developed specifically for premature ejaculation called Prilogy. Okay. So I just found out the other day, Prilogy is actually not available in the United States, but Prilogy has about a 1 to 2 hour onset. So it's almost like you're taking Viagra, as opposed to, say, taking Zoloft or Prozac, where you have to take it every day, or it's about a 4 to 6 hour onset. You can take Prilogy or Duloxetine about an hour beforehand.
Oh, so then you don't necessarily have to be, you don't have to be taking that all the time. It just kind of right before.
And you don't have the side effects of the antidepressants, and you don't have the social stigma of being on an antidepressant.
Oh, great.
But something else that I discovered was you can take St. John's wort. So St. John's wort is an interesting compound. It's a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, but it works in a slightly different way than the pharmaceutical grade SSRIs. So it's the most popular mood lifter in Europe, and the data are almost as good as Zoloft and some of the other SSRI antidepressants.
Yeah, the other ones.
But the nice thing is that there's hypericin and a hyperforin. There are two substances in St. John's wort. And if you are able to isolate the hyperforin, it has the beneficial effects without the side effects.
Oh, really?
Exactly. And so I have a supplement called Prelong, which is hyperforin and L-citrulline, because the SSRIs have a slight detrimental effect on erections. Mm-hmm. So by adding the L-citrulline, you boost the nitric oxide, you boost the erections. Yeah. And so we found that patients who are taking Prelong, which you can also get at affirmscience.com, it improves improves premature ejaculation.
Oh, okay. So it improves being able to address what, the premature ejaculation symptoms, being able to. Yeah,
so you can go longer. And these things aren't mutually exclusive. So if you ejaculate in a minute and you use a delay spray like Promescent, maybe you can go 2 minutes. And then if you're taking something like Prelong, maybe you can go 4 minutes.
Gotcha.
And then there are some behavioral and psychological techniques that you can also use to be able to extend that even further. And that's sort of beyond my level of training.
Yeah, and that would be something that you could check out the episode that I did with Shannon Hickman, and we talk about some premature ejaculation techniques, some ways that you can work with your partner, also work with your body, understanding, hey, it's okay that you don't have to wait. I mean, you can ejaculate, still have a sexual experience, go through the refractory period, and continue on later. I mean, there's other things that you can do, as well as when it comes to psychological. There's a lot of research there's a lot of experiences between if you have delayed ejaculation, erectile dysfunction, and then that starts to be addressed, then premature ejaculation tends to happen as well, kind of in hand. So it's not uncommon to experience those, and those tend to be more psychological, dealing with anxiety, dealing with distress, expectations. There's a lot that plays into it.
Right. Well, when you have anxiety, you have sympathetic hormones. When you have sympathetic hormones, it facilitates orgasm. When you have orgasm quickly, you have premature ejaculation. So using something like a delay cream, using something like Prelong, the side effect of Prelong is basically elevating the mood. Uh-huh. So you have happier people that are having better sex.
Nice. And that's your website, you were saying, the affirmscience.com.
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 And there's I do a lot of physician and patient education. So there's whole 10, 15, 20-minute webinars.
Oh, cool.
On nitric oxide, the science of how nitric oxide works. For Prelong, premature ejaculation, going through all of the different options and how all of them work.
Wonderful. Yeah. So you can
like I said, my patients I have a lot of highly educated patients that ask a lot of really challenging questions. And so I feel an obligation to get the information to my patients that Otherwise, people will go off on the internet and they'll go to all sorts of strange websites and come back with all sorts of strange information. But what I find is if you actually give patients the information that they're really looking for in a way that's fairly easy to digest, then they won't go off looking on the internet.
Yeah, definitely, all in one place. And is it something that you created, the Prelong and these other the nitric oxide booster and things? Is that something you created? You co-created with somebody?
I created them myself.
You created them yourself. Okay.
I found that there was a big need, and it was a niche that I could fill, and it was a way that I could educate my patients.
Wonderful, wonderful. So as we're talking about premature ejaculation, it leads us into some people are expecting ways that they're supposed to perform, and we can't talk about performance without the big question is, does size matter? And for some people, they're really concerned about their size, and they go to this. And I don't know. Tell us a little bit about this snipping this tendon. Apparently, there's a tendon you can snip.
Suspensory ligament.
The suspensory ligament.
Yeah.
And where's that connected? How does that all work?
Sure. So, first of all, it's important to know what normal is. So, and there have been studies that look at what the normal or average size of the penis is based on country.
Oh, okay.
Or not. Yeah. So the normal size of the penis in the United States is about 5.1 inches.
Okay.
If you go to the Congo, it's 7.1 inches.
Whoa.
If you go to North and South Korea, it's 3.8 inches.
Okay, so it changes.
That's why I think there's so much fighting in the Korean Peninsula.
Oh, yeah. It's there. Okay.
But, it varies by location, by genetic makeup of people.
Yeah, so it definitely changes depending on your genes, is what I'm hearing you say.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, there's something called the micropenis,
okay,
which is being more than 2 standard deviations off the mean. And the bell curve is pretty steep. Most guys' penises are about the same size. But if you're less than 3 or 2.5 inches, you're considered, that's considered more of a congenital issue, that your penis didn't grow to the length that it was supposed to grow.
Okay. Is there ways to address that?
Unfortunately, there really isn't. There's not really a safe way to address that.
Oh, okay.
That I know of. But, most guys fall within 2 standard deviations of the norm. But some people want to have a longer penis, the same way that some women want to have bigger breasts.
Oh, okay.
Who am I to judge?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So there are things that people do. The simplest thing is, I think, what they call jelqing, which is a technique of pulling the penis. And honestly, I don't know all that much about it, but what I do know is that your penis is attached to the ischial spine. So it's attached to a part of the hip bone, and half of your penis is on the inside and half of your penis is on the outside. So if someone asks you how long your penis is and you say, well, it's 12 inches, and then the woman looks and says, well, it only looks like 6 inches to me, you can say, well, Dr. Brandeis said half's on the inside and half's on the outside.
There it is. And so it's pulling, apparently that's supposed to be pulling that farther out.
Exactly. And so what guys care about most is length. What women care about more is girth.
Okay.
At least according to Cosmo magazine and some of those other important publications.
Oh my goodness, Cosmo! Don't get me started.
But the things that guys care about when they're walking around naked in the locker room is how long their penis is, not how thick their penis is.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, why don't we talk a little bit about thickness first?
Okay.
Okay. So there are things that guys can do to improve the thickness of the penis. One of the most popular is injection. So injection of either a filler, like a filler that people get injected in their lips or in their face.
Oh, okay.
And you can inject it circumferentially around the penis. That tends to last. It tends to be pretty expensive because those fillers, a tube of filler is usually around $500, and you usually need about 10 tubes of filler for a penis.
Wow.
So it's usually $5,000 or $10,000 to bulk a penis.
And those only last for maybe 6 months, right?
Yeah, they tend to last for about a year or two. And if it's not done properly, you get kind of a lumpy penis. Okay. In addition, when you inject a filler, in that plane in the penis, you create scar tissue.
Oh, okay.
So if you wanted to have another procedure later on, you're sacrificing the plane of that, the surgical plane, to make it much more difficult to do anything else.
Oh, for later times, yeah.
For later times. The other thing people do is they inject fat, so you can get some liposuction and then process the fat, inject the fat in the penis as well. I'm not a big fan of injection of fillers, but it's, with some exceptions, it's pretty safe.
Okay.
Another thing that you can do is called pneuma. Pneuma is the first FDA cleared penile implant, specifically for cosmetics. So there's a penile implant for erectile dysfunction, but this is for men with normal erectile function. And the implant, which kind of looks like a taco shell, sits on top of the erectile bodies and under the skin. And that will give men about 5 centimeters of increased girth, almost 2 inches of girth.
Okay.
If people are interested, you can go to Pneuma, PENUMA.com. There's a surgeon in Beverly Hills, Dr. Elist, who's done about 3,000 of them.
Wow.
And it's actually a safe and effective surgery.
Okay. And you say it's FDA approved. It's the first one.
FDA cleared. Yeah.
FDA cleared.
Yeah.
Okay.
Drugs get approved and devices get cleared.
Okay. Great.
But Dr. Elist has put a lot of time and effort into making it a safe and reproducible surgery.
Yeah.
Okay. That is girth. Now, unfortunately, length is more difficult. So one thing that they've done to try to improve length is cut the suspensory ligament. Okay. So if you feel just below where your pubic hair is, you have your pubic bone.
Yeah.
And there's a ligament that attaches from the pubic bone to the penis. And the purpose of that ligament is to support the penis in terms of getting erect or lifting up. Okay. You can go in and cut the suspensory ligament. What that will do is it'll make the penis hang lower. So the penis in the locker room, looks longer.
Okay.
The problem is the erection is exactly the same size.
Oh.
And when you do get an erection, you lose that ability to stand up. So you get a rigid erection, but it'll point towards your toes.
Oh, so it doesn't, because it loses that suspense, or that suspensory ligament.
Suspension.
The suspension.
Instead of that, yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the problem is some people get scar tissue. And
the cut.
From the cut. And so then that scar tissue limits the expansion of the penis.
Okay.
And so in some people, it's become really a nightmare, really disastrous.
So that one's more of an unsafe one to do when it comes to elongation.
Exactly. And so I would highly, highly recommend against that.
Okay. Are there some other things you can do if you are interested? Or I guess, what are some things we can do if we're interested in increasing the length?
Sure. And so because I've seen so many guys who are really unhappy with the results of penile lengthening surgeries, not the pneuma, but cutting suspensory ligament. And there are people that inject things into the penis that aren't safe. And I've seen some really, really bad examples of that. I wanted to develop something that was safe and had some science behind it. And so I created what's called the P-Long study. So I'm working with Dr. Runnels of the Cellular Medicine Association, who invented the P-Shot. I'm working with the folks at Pathright Medical that make a device called the Restore X. I'm working with Gesiva Medical that make a penile pump. And I'm working with Eclipse that make the PRP kits. And the 4 of us got together and we designed a protocol where over 6 months, men will get 6 P-shots, right? Remember, that gives you all sorts of growth factors. So, for example, my wife, I have 4 kids, but my last 2 were twins. And my wife's a dentist. And when she was pregnant with twins, she put braces on. She had an orthodontist put braces on. And the orthodontist said that her teeth moved 3 times as he's ever seen an adult teeth move.
Wow.
And the reason for that is because she had so much growth factor floating around her body because she was, incubating twins.
Uh-huh.
And so if you inject platelets into the penis, you're floating a lot of growth factor into the penis.
Wow.
And then if you use a penile traction device, because the collagen in the penis runs in two different directions. It runs longitudinally and it runs circularly. And so a traction device will pull the penis lengthwise, and a vacuum erection device will pull the penis girthwise.
Oh, okay.
Right? Because the thing is, if you're pulling it long, you're going to end up with a pencil penis.
And you don't want
No, nobody wants a pencil penis. Yeah. So you want to keep you want the length, but you want to keep the girth.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's why we use suction and traction and the PRP, and then we also use a firm because you want to improve circulation. You want to improve blood flow. Mm-hmm. And so this is a real science study. So we take measurements beforehand. When we take measurements every month, the guys come in, and then we take measurements at the end, and we're going to see if we're actually growing penises or not. Gotcha. It's not going to be I'm a board certified urologist. I've done a lot of research in the past, and I'm not there to make false claims. What I'm there to do is to develop something that men can use that's safe, mm-hmm. that if they want to improve the length of their penis, they can. And I want to be able to present that data to men so that I can say, okay, if you do this, the average guy will have X, Y, or Z. Uh-huh. I think my guess is it's going to improve penile length about an inch.
Okay. In a safe way that is...
In a safe way.
In a safe way. So this is still under research. It's still exploring this, but the hope is that you find something that can increase length while maintaining and not going crazy with like, yeah, sure, we can give you 3 inches, but end up with a penis.
Yeah, only the good Lord can give you 3 inches. A urologist might be able to give you an inch, but only the good Lord can give you 3 inches. But if anyone that's listening is interested in signing up for the study, you can go to Brandeis MD, BRANDEISMD.com, and we're accepting folks into the study.
Nice. And is this an IRB?
This is IRB. This is everything. All 100% above board, real research.
Okay, say that one more time. So it's Brandeis
MD, BRANDEISMD.com.
Okay.
So I have Dr. Scott Liu, who's an MD, also has a clinical research degree from UCSF. Mm-hmm. He's running the study for me.
Okay, great.
This is all 100% legit.
Yeah, and I guess I'm saying IRB, and I didn't explain what IRB is. Essentially, that means that you've been approved by a research board that is saying, is this safe for humans? You're not just running this in a cool back alleyway that's like, hey, come on over to Brandeis' place. And IRB essentially says, hey, this is okay for to be able to bring humans onto this study, and we see this as something that is safe, or at least that... as you're doing this, you're going to give all the information up front. This isn't sketch.
No.
Okay.
We're not testing this on rats.
We're not. Okay. Perfect.
This is humans.
Perfect. So if people are interested, go over there and check that out. I am curious about when it comes to the penis. We're talking about some of these diseases that male-bodied individuals can get, such as Peyronie's. Can you tell us about Peyronie's and some of these other diseases that affect the male-bodied people? So,
Peyronie's disease affects 1 out of every 20 men over the age of 40.
Wow.
Yeah. So Peyronie's was kind of interesting guy. So he was the court surgeon to Louis XV, mm-hmm. and he was the one that made it illegal for barbers to do surgery.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you're ever on Jeopardy and they ask you that question, you'll know the answer now.
What is Peyronie?
But
who is Peyronie?
So men, normal penis is straight. And on the inside of the penis, you have basically 2 erectile bodies. And then you have what's called the corpus spongiosum, or the urethra, that sit below the erectile bodies. Mm-hmm. Okay. Somewhere along the line, some trauma occurs to the erectile bodies. Remember, I told you the lining of the inside of the penis is a unique substance. It's made of collagen and elastin, and it's able to withstand blood pressures in the hundreds.
Wow.
So the normal blood pressure in the aorta is 120/80, but the blood pressure in the penis might get to 2 to 3 to 400. Wow. And then if you start banging it around, it has to withstand really high pressures. And so the lining of the tunica is 2 millimeters. The lining of the aorta is only 1 millimeter.
Oh,
so
okay.
It's twice as thick as the thickest blood vessel that we have.
Wow. Okay.
But if you're having intercourse and you miss and the penis bends, it can cause a little crack or a trauma that heals a scar. Or if you have a trigger finger or a Dupuytren's contracture of your finger and you have a collagen vascular disease, you can have scar tissue of the penis. Or 80% of the time, guys don't know when they actually have an event that caused the scar tissue. I think what happens is guys get erections at night, they roll over funny, it hurts, they wake up, they go back to sleep, and 6 months later, they have a penile curvature from scar tissue.
Okay.
And so then the question is, well, how bad is it? And what do you do about it? So a lot of times it'll hurt, at least for a period of time.
While erect, or just hurt constantly?
While erect. Usually with an erection.
Okay.
Because what happens is the penile tissue is supposed to stretch, right? So when guys talk about how long their penis is, they talk about a stretch penile length. They don't talk about how long they are flaccid. And so when the penis gets erect, the scar tissue is collagen, but it's disorganized collagen. And so the disorganized collagen doesn't stretch.
Okay.
And the organized collagen on the other side of the penis stretches to its normal length. And so to compensate that, your penis curves.
Oh, okay.
And so most commonly the curve is upward about 70% of the time, but you can get a downward curve or a curve to the left or the curve to the right.
Oh, okay.
So a slight curve, 10 or 15% probably isn't going to bother anyone, but we get patients with 30% or 50% or 70%, 70-degree curves, and that can really interfere with intercourse, and it predisposes you to injuring the penis again.
Because it's already on that curve.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And so it's a really, really difficult problem. First of all, it's devastating for men, especially with a 40 or 50-degree curvature or more. They're no longer able to be physically intimate with their partners, or there are only certain positions that they are able to even penetrate in.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, because it doesn't stretch, it's shorter. And so no guy wants to have a shorter penis.
Gotcha.
Or at least shorter than it used to be. And so the options for treatment are very limited. There are no oral medications that work. There's injection therapy. So recently, the FDA approved a medication called Xiaflex. Xiaflex is what's called a collagenase. It's an enzyme that dissolves collagen.
Wow.
The issue with Xiaflex or collagenase is that it only improves the curvature about 20%, 20 degrees. Okay? And each injection is about $3,000 or $4,000 just for the medication. Whoa. Most men need anywhere between 4 and 10 injections.
Holy cow.
So you can imagine the insurance companies are really, really excited when they get those prior authorizations.
Yeah, I'll bet. And so it's not really accessible then.
They limit the accessibility. The other issue is after an injection, because it weakens the lining of the penis, you can't have sex for about 4 months. 4 weeks.
4 weeks. So 4 weeks. That makes sense.
But if you have a series of injections, it can be, several months.
Just depending on how intense this is.
Exactly. So, because cost and because the side effects and because it doesn't work all that well, we need to find something better for improving erectile function and changing in the curvature of patients with Peyronie's disease. And that's where GAINSWave comes in.
Okay. So this is something GAINSWave can also address.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Exactly. It's still controversial.
How do you spell GAINSWave?
GAINSWAVE.
Gotcha. So that's GAINSWave.
GAINSWave.com.
So it's controversial, you're saying.
Exactly. So there are some studies that are out there that show that shockwave therapy can improve penile curvature, and there are other studies out there that show that it doesn't work. And so what I'm doing now, this is my third IRB approved clinical research study, because what I did when I decided to go full bore into men's sexual medicine is I looked at every paper that was ever written on GAINSWave and Peyronie's disease. And I looked at all the protocols that people were using, and I took sort of a shotgun approach. I took the best of what everyone else was doing, and I combined it in a single protocol.
Okay.
And so I do a GAINSWave, I do what's called transdermal verapamil, I do penile stretching, I use a penile vacuum device. I kind of throw the kitchen sink at men.
Mm-hmm.
And I've initially had a lot of really good success.
Gotcha.
Not everyone, but I've had good success with improving the curvature and restoring some of the length of my patients with Peyronie's disease.
Wow, that's great. And then as things continue, we're going to find more and more again with more research and things like that.
Exactly. And the other nice thing is, one, it's a lot less expensive than $4,000 a shot. And we're encouraging men to get an erection during the procedure and during the treatment, not the procedure, but during the treatment, because we want to stretch the collagen back out to the way it was. So the problem is scar tissue is disorganized collagen. What we want to create is organized collagen that stretches.
Yeah, that makes sense. And being able to, is there, because we were talking a little bit about other diseases that can show up. Are there other ones that you're researching, or are there just other ones we ought to be aware of?
Ah, boy. I think 3 diseases is enough for me.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm just saying, if there's anything else.
Yeah, that's enough to keep me up at night.
Oh, I'll bet. And then, so that leads me to my final question when we're talking. I get this question all the time. What can I do if I experience delayed ejaculation? I've had partners reach out to me. I've had individuals reach out to me. I work with individuals that experience a difficulty wanting to orgasm, not being able to orgasm after consistent stimulation for 45 minutes, an hour, hour and a half, 3 hours, and nothing seems to be supporting them. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe what can be done there? Because I don't know if we've got a lot of research on this.
Sure. So, a lot of it depends on what the underlying issue is. So, for example, some people on antidepressant medications, pharmaceutical grade antidepressants, have a really difficult time ejaculating. In addition, as you get older, it becomes more difficult to ejaculate. So, those are 2 factors. Other things, some people at baseline just have difficulty ejaculating. I had a patient come in the other day with his wife, and his poor wife, she just looked exasperated. And so I was talking to them, and it took him about 3 hours to ejaculate.
Wow.
And so there are male vibrators that you can use. There's one that you can get at the Urology Health Store. And there's another one that you can get, I think it's at hotoctopus.com.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that one. Well, that's the company. I'm trying to remember what they call it.
I think it's called the Pulse.
Yeah, Pulse. It looks like it fits around the base of the penis.
Exactly. And the nerves can be stimulated at a certain vibration to fire. And those nerves can be overstimulated with vibratory stimulation, and that can cause ejaculation.
Okay.
And so for men who have, there's no shame in using accessories to what nature gave us to improve ejaculatory outcome or to improve pleasure, so on and so forth.
Totally. What was the first one? So you said Hot Octopus with the Pulse.
Then there's the Urology Health Store.
Okay.
I think it's urologyhealthstore.com. And I know that they have a male vibrator. A male vibrator there. Okay. And so is there, it sounds as though medications could be a part of it. If not, age. If not, then, is there a reason? Function. The thing is, a lot of type 1 diabetics have these kind of issues.
Oh, okay.
Because they get bad neuropathy.
Oh.
Or people with multiple sclerosis, people with strokes, that, still want to be sexually active. It's an important part of life. And just because you have MS or a stroke or type 1 or type 2 diabetes doesn't mean that life should end.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. It doesn't just end because of these experiences that we have.
Exactly. But, the same way that people take insulin or they take metformin, in order to have a satisfying sexual life, you may need to have some helping hands. Yeah,
definitely. And being able to talk with a therapist, go in and see a urologist, even looking at the hot octopus, the pulse vibrator, things like that I love that you said there's no shame in using those. Let's get to the sexual health that you would like to experience or the sexual experiences that you want, without us feeling like, well, great, I shouldn't be this way. Let's try and eliminate those shoulds from.
Right. Or I'm a bad person, or I'm inadequate as a person because I am this way.
Totally. Well, Dr. Brandeis, I'm really excited. I'm really glad that you were on the show with me today, especially in the last episode as well. I really appreciate your time. I always ask this of any of the guests that I have. If there is one takeaway, or if we could sum up some things that you really want the listeners to know or to take with them, what would you have them? What would you want them to take away?
That's a good one. So first of all, sexual satisfaction, there are two parts of it. There's the physiologic part of it, that's the blood flow, and there's the psychologic or, the self part of it. And then there's the partner part of it too, which is the communication between yourself and the partner. So those are the three important things about having a satisfactory sex life, or a physical, emotional, mental intimacy. So it's important not to neglect any of those three things. And then in terms of improving erectile function, you have to do the important things to take care of yourself. You exercise, eat well, don't drink, don't smoke, take good care of yourself. And then there are the 5 or 6 things that you can do beyond that. A nitric oxide booster. You can take Viagra or Levitra or Cialis, GAINSWave, shockwave therapy to improve vascularity, vacuum erection device if you've lost nighttime erections and you want to keep penile length, and then PRP if those things aren't working for you.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much for spending the time with us to be able to talk about something that affects so many male-bodied individuals, and kind of giving us some more insight on what options we've got. Thanks for being with me.
Great. Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode. If you have questions about this episode, you can always reach out to Dr. Brandeis or myself at birdsandbeespodcast@gmail.com. You can also send me a text, give me a phone call, 385-449-1818. I look forward to seeing y'all in the next episode. And as always, keep the buzz alive. All right, Hive mates, another episode in the books. Thank you so much for being a part of the Hive. I really appreciate each and every one of you listening. Whether this is your first episode or this is an episode that you've shared with your friends or you've come back to listen to, thank you so much. I really love you for supporting this dream of mine. In order to keep Birds and Bees podcast alive, we rely on donations and contributions from listeners. Please consider donating what you can to help me keep this podcast going. Go to our Patreon account and consider becoming a monthly contributor. Thank you for those who are contributing, and thank you for considering supporting the podcast in this way. Birds and Bees podcast is all about encouraging sexual health conversations with your partner, your children, and empowering yourself to be the sexual being you want to be. If you have questions, comments, or concerns, please give me a call or a text message at 385-449-1818. You can also email me at birdsandbeespodcast@gmail.com. And if you'd like more support in talking to your kids about pornography and sex, be sure to check out my e-courses. Just go to birdsandbeespodcast.com and follow the links in the homepage. Thanks so much for keeping the buzz alive. Without you, there's no way this conversation can make the change that we need in our society. So much love to all of you. We'll see you in the next episode.